Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us at the Competitive Advantage Talks brought to you by Kager, also known as the Craft Analytics Group. My name is Anna Haig, and I am a grad student at MIT Sloan. And it's my pleasure to introduce this talk, Computer Vision to Enhance Performance, a Paralympic Perspective. So please join me in a warm welcome to Emily Aljocker, who is a 2024 Paralympic silver medalist.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and good afternoon. Yes, my name is Emily Aljocker. I'm a graduate student in the MIT Sports Lab, where I study computation and cognition, and I also competed at the 2024 Paralympic Games in para-rowing. If I don't look like a rower, that is because I'm a coxswain. I'm the small person who sits in the front of a boat and steers and tells my teammates what to do. And today we're going to be looking at computer vision. But before we dive into that and how it can help us and how it can help athletes, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret about the Paris Games. All right, so in social media, can I get a nod if we saw anything about chocolate muffins or the Seine or anything of the like? Yes, I'm getting a couple of nods. But one thing I did not see at all was anyone talking about the mailroom. Now, the mailroom in the Olympic and the Paralympic Village had a bicycling game where you could compete against anyone else in the village. You hop on this game and you cycle as fast as you can and you try to collect gold coins. Now I'm going to show you a video of my teammate and I competing in the mailroom. This is me in my heels trying to beat out all the other athletes. And then it's going to switch to my teammate Gemma. Now Gemma is a Division I extraordinarily fast athlete, and she could beat me at anything, any day. But I happened to win against Gemma on this game. And when that happened, she said to me, I need to know why. So what you still see on the screen up here is her skeleton. I just took my iPhone video of Gemma on the bike. I applied some skeletal tracking, and I looked at the differences between the two of us, and I found out that, in fact, Gemma was cycling faster and stronger than I was, and that gave us the clue that, in fact, how fast we cycled had nothing to do with who won this, and it was only who aimed better. But that key point of comparing athletes and using materials that we have, my iPhone video, some code that I wrote, that's what we're going to be diving into today. And at the core of this discussion is athletes, helping athletes perform their best and understand their competition. So with that, what's our agenda? First, what is computer vision? What is the skeletal tracking? A little bit about where it comes from. Then we're going to dive into some of the insights that have been extremely important to me. We're going to look at it in a rowing context, but this applies to almost every single sport, or if we work out, the things we're doing when we work out, so this can apply to anyone in this room. And then we're going to cycle back to what this type of technology revealed for para-rowing. And just to give you an inside look, this is top secret research that is just coming out and may very well influence how para-rowing competes in the next years to come and the rules. So with that, what is pose estimation? What is markerless motion tracking? What is this? Well, first, it's computer vision, which means we're teaching computers to know what they're looking at. Computers aren't smart. AI isn't smart. We have to teach computers what they're seeing. So first and foremost, this is computer vision. Second, models that are doing skeletal tracking are looking for your joints. So anytime you see something that's skeletal tracking, it is literally looking for the joints on your body and building a skeleton out of those joints. All right, seems pretty clear enough. Why do we care about something like this? Why do we care about this tool? Well, first, it can allow coaches, athletes, anyone to perform deeper video analysis. Next, it can be a cost-effective way to get a competitive edge. Now, everything that I'm about to show you in this presentation, I did as a lowly graduate student with absolutely no budget. It was all completely free. So if you take what I'm doing and showing you today and think about someone who has an entire team or a budget to perform these tools, you can even imagine how much better they could be. And lastly, everyone's talking about skeletal tracking. Can I get a nod if we've seen anything about skeletal tracking in sports? Yes, you can even look outside at some of the startups outside and see skeletal tracking. So everyone's talking about it. We want to have a baseline understanding of what these tools are to A, just be informed as AI is on the rise, but B, have purchasing power if we're going to be implementing any of these tools into our organizations. Next up, I would be remiss if we didn't start this off as a lecture at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And just to give everyone an inside look into AI and machine learning, just in the same way that a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not always a square, machine learning is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not always machine learning. And what differs the two is machine learning is when a machine is learning over time. It's learning from its experiences. It's learning over time, whereas artificial intelligence is just teaching machines to think like a person. But that differentiation is when a machine learns over time. And that is what these models are doing. And with that, what can we do with pose estimation? We're going to dive a little bit into what insights have been really important to me and my Paralympic teammates. And even though we're going to look at this in the context of rowing, it really can be extrapolated out into many other sports and scenarios. So first, this is my teammate, Andrew. He is the men's PR1 single scull for Team USA. And we wanted to know, can we, this is just my iPhone video, analyze something about Andrew? Now, if we watch this video, you can see there are people in the background, there are lots of different items in the frame, and I think I've heard from many other organizations a fear of, oh, what if I don't have really good video quality? Can I perform any kind of video analysis? The answer is yes. So take this video, same exact video, we're gonna watch Andrew. Right here, you can see the overlay of his skeleton, and on the right, you can see everyone else in the room, as well as Andrew highlighted in red. And so all I did was take a baseline open source model, write a little Python package on top of that tracks Andrew and only Andrew and disregards everyone else in the frame so that I can get the insights just on this athlete. But the key here is we can, in fact, look at an athlete, look at their joints, even if there are other people in the frame. Next up, that's kind of cool. What does that tell us? What can we get out of something like that? I'm going to show you a couple of graphs here and walk you through them. So on the left side of the screen, this is tracking Andrew's handle. So this is showing what his handle looks like over time. This is a very important metric to rowing. It shows kind of what you would be doing with your oar handle if you were to be rowing. Next, on the right side of the screen, you see a couple of graphs. The top graph is just looking at a couple of Andrew's joints over time, his wrist, his shoulder, his knee. The next one down is the velocity of those same joints, and the one below that is acceleration. Velocity is going to show me how fast different joints on Andrew are moving, and the acceleration can give me an insight into his power. Okay, there we go. That could give me a little bit of information about how my teammate's rowing. But what if I wanted to take it a step further and think about how I would coach this athlete? What you're watching right now is you're watching that same video of Andrew rowing, and in blue, that overlay skeleton is any time that Andrew's hands drop below his heart. Why would I care about something like that? If you look on the left side of your screen and you see that plot, you see this big diagonal downward. Can I get a nod if you're with me on that big diagonal downward? Yep. What that tells me is that Andrew is dropping his hands as he approaches putting the blade in the water or picking up the weight of the ergometer, the rowing machine he's on. And in rowing, we like to keep things pretty continuous, pretty smooth, pretty horizontal. So I might say to Andrew, I want you to keep your hands a little bit higher. But what we can do with tools like this is show him when he's not. So anytime you see that blue skeleton in that video overlay, that's when Andrew's hands have dropped below his heart. And the blue skeleton is what he would look like if he kept his hands raised. So this is just another tool that we could enable coaches and athletes to make technical changes and see it visually. Because I think we can all agree that we've had someone tell us to do something in our lives, but seeing it and resonating with it is the next step. So that's something that a tool like this can do. Another key metric, this is the last metric I'm going to show you today, is body angle forward and backward. This is going to be extraordinarily important into some of the competitive insights that I'm going to get into next. But what we're looking at right here is the angle that Andrew's leaning forward and backward over the course of 3 strokes. This tells me how his body is swinging, which gives a lot of insight into how much power he's getting and how much range of movement he's getting. But this is just Andrew. This is just a USA athlete that I can video myself. What about his competition? What if I want to perform video analysis on people that I don't work with or people that I've never met before? Is that possible? The answer is yes. What you're seeing on the screen right here are the handle tracking of 3 Paralympic athletes. Now, I had mentioned that this is tracking what your handle would be doing before you enter the blade in the water, and that in rowing, we like to keep things kind of smooth. All right, you guys are looking at these 3 plots. One of these athletes won at the Paralympics in Paris. I want you to take a second, look at these images, and then I want you to hold up if number 1 is all the way on the left, number 2 is the middle, and number 3 is all the way on the right. What number do you think, what number person do you think won gold at the 2024 Paralympic Games? I'm gonna say 3, 2, 1, hold them up, ready? 3, 2, 1, hold them up. I see a room full of 2s. Is anyone an expert in rowing in this room? I don't think so, but you all just told me who won gold at the Paralympics by looking at a metric that we could get from just video analysis. And when I talk about video analysis, these are, I watched YouTube videos and applied skeletal tracking to YouTube videos, publicly available data, and a room of sport and athletically inclined people, but maybe not rowing experts, just gave me a huge insight into what would make a winning athlete. That's huge. Next up, I can look at those joint trackings across those athletes. So those same metrics that we talked about with Andrew, we can look at those metrics across all athletes. The middle athlete, once again, is the winner in the PR1 men's single at the Paralympic Games. And I can see that in blue, that is tracking the velocity of his shoulder. Out of all the athletes, he has a very, very smooth shoulder velocity that may give me insight into what would be a winning strategy, into how I'm moving my shoulders over a race. All the way on the right side of the screen, we have the 3rd place finisher. We see in blue, that's tracking his knee joint. There's a lot of movement there, so that might give me insight into the fact that he's bracing with his legs, and that was an advantage there. And then, of course, in red, I can also track their hands, and we see Andrew still all the way on the left. Now, we just got a little bit granular with rowing. You all are pretty much experts now in the room, but just to kind of take it creatively to other sports that we may like watching, I just applied the same exact code that I ran for Andrew on a bunch of other sports. So up top, we have soccer. Next, we have para-athletics. And what was really special about this video was this model is able to track a prosthetic. A lot of models tend to fail on prosthetics, but if we get a good baseline model, we can track athletes who are wearing prosthetics. And finally, we got some surfing. This is a pretty cool video, obviously because it's surfing, but also water tends to make models like this fail. And so what's really awesome is we're getting to a point now that we can analyze water sports with skeletal tracking. All right. This is where we're going to get into the crux of how this tool showed me that my sport was changing. This is brand new results, brand new research, and the goal of this research is to bring it to World Rowing and hopefully have discussions about the event. What do I mean by that? Before I dive deeper into what changed and what I saw, I have to give you a little bit of insight into the 3 classes of Paralympic rowing. We have PR1. This used to be known as arms and shoulders. These are athletes who are predominantly using their arms and shoulders. We have PR2. This class used to be known as trunk and arms, using your full upper body movement. And then we have PR3. This was the event that I competed at the Games. These are athletes who are using a sliding seat. They're using their legs, they're using their trunk, they're using their arms. And today, what I'm about to go into next is in particular PR1 and PR2. So these are athletes who their seat doesn't move up and down. They're predominantly using their upper body. Now the story here is in 2018, there was a big rule change for PR1 athletes. So the event that predominantly used your arms and shoulders. And what changed is where athletes were strapped to their seat. It used to be that you had to be strapped really high at your ribs, and then all of a sudden after 2018, you could be strapped anywhere along your upper body. And below the visual of the PR1 pre-2018 and post-2018 is a PR2 athlete. PR2 athletes are not strapped to their seats. So I wanted to better understand, did this rule change fundamentally change the way that athletes were moving? And that led me to the largest para-rowing study that's ever been completed. In para-rowing, there are only 17 research papers. I think one of them uses artificial intelligence. This is now going to be the largest study ever completed on the sport, and it was done using publicly available data. Now, just to give another visual about what this looks like, this is an athlete, top athlete, pre-2018, post-2018, and a PR2 athlete below. But in terms of the study size, 120 public videos were analyzed. All of those athletes, their joint tracking, the velocity, their angles, all analyzed, all collected, and then split into 2 groups. So what I did was I took all of those joints, I took all of those angles, and I said just break this up into 2 groups and tell me who's in these 2 groups. Now, my hypothesis was that this would break up the 2 classes, right? If I have 2 groups of people, the thought process was that all the data would be split into PR1 and PR2. But actually what happened was it split the data up into pre-2018 PR1 athletes, second group PR2, and post-rule change athletes. What does that mean? That means that 2 different events are merging together, and because the video that I'm able to access that's public tends to be the higher placing athletes in the PR1 category, this means that higher placing athletes or podium finishing athletes are merging closer to PR2. So when I'm thinking about as a coach or as an athlete, what that means that as we're working with our trainers, as we're working on what to do next, we need to be thinking about movements that are gonna help get even closer to the PR2 category. Just because when we break up all of that video and break up all of that data, it's splitting up into those 2 groups. And that is the crux of what my thesis at MIT is looking at. And I know, once again, this is very granular in rowing. I can see your focus. Thank you for staying very engrossed in para rowing. But what's important that I want to leave you with is not only is this looking at athletes in one sport, I was able to apply a skeletal tracking to 123 videos of athletes that I had never met with, never worked with, and able to derive an insight about how an entire sport has changed, and maybe how we need to be thinking about it moving ahead to the next few competitions and games. To sum it up, thank you for coming to your first lecture at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Machine Learning. In the last 20 minutes, we've discussed a free tool that allowed me to analyze how my sport has changed and how it is evolving. And this is giving us purchasing power to tools like this. This is giving us machine learning knowledge and baseline understanding of artificial intelligence, which is something that is so ubiquitous to our daily lives now. And at the end, it all comes back to the athletes. This is Team USA at the 2024 Paris Games, singing the American national anthem as the flag was handed over, thinking ahead to the 2028 LA Games. And so all of this work that I'm thinking about and everything that we're doing with these tools is just thinking about how do we keep pushing for Team USA to be top of the podium again and again and again. And it all comes back to the athletes and helping us understand our competition and our capabilities. And I want to say thank you to my teammates, to the Director of Para High Performance, Ellen Minsner, and of course to MIT and the summit and the conference here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. You're such an amazing speaker, and everything was so well put together. So I study big data analytics. I think this is one of the coolest presentations I've seen today. And when you were talking about some of the free tools, my mind was thinking, oh, I want to learn this. So what are some of the online resources to learn how to do something like this?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the baseline model that I use is something called MedTrabs. That's really deep down, but if you were to just run it, if you were to look it up, you could get the baseline code and just kind of add the abilities to run video. But I will be publishing my thesis, so it should be a plug and go. You can take any video that you have, put it into the code, and make any changes you want. So I'll be publishing that in June. But also Google has publicly available 3D pose estimation models that you can make work for anything. Does that answer your question? Cool. Thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, so obviously one of the biggest things with something like this is the data cleaning component of it. So with the 120 videos that you selected, what what was the process for actually selecting them and also cleaning that data? Because even the video you showed of Andrew, you can see the joints moving.
Yep,
oddly sometimes.
100%. So first of all, what I did, I really wanted to use a three-dimensional model because I didn't want to worry about what angle the video camera was at. But then I just decided any video that I was going to take, I wanted it to be directly from the side. So I watched hundreds of hours of footage and hand cut every single video. I would not suggest that for a larger scale investigation, but that's how I got very careful with the exact angle that I was taking video from. And then next up, I removed any of the legs. The thing that was most noisy was anything below the waist, because in particular, you can imagine with rowing, there's a lot of equipment, there are oars, there are things including that. So that cleaned up a lot of the data. And then I applied a function in the code that was saying if there's like a big discrepancy between frames to smooth it out and to interpolate between the frames to help smooth it out.
Thank you very much. Amazing presentation as always. Thank you, Emily. Just a quick question. You said the rule change and then what you found out looking between PR1 and PR2. You mentioned training and performance changes. Is there any of that which would inform any potential classification changes?
Yes. So my goal with this work was first to just kind of understand, was there a change in what's been happening? And when that became apparent, I'm hoping that this could potentially be used as a tool because, and this is very similar to rowing, but in rowing, there are two steps of classification, medical and then technical on an ergometer. And so my hope is that a tool like this could help inform the technical classifier of how far athletes are leaning forward and backward and give them just another data point, another tool to help inform their classification.
Thanks. So when you see that someone's hands are in a certain direction, above the heart, that kind of thing, it's not a guarantee that the champion's movements, for instance, are necessarily the best for any given individual, right? It could be that someone else optimizes their performance with lower hands or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that in rowing? Is it best to emulate the best, or is it just ideation to help someone get a little bit more performance? How do you think about that in rowing?
Yes, that's definitely, when I'm showing tools like this, I think a fear comes up of, oh my gosh, is something like this going to replace coaches? And I think that's, you get to the crux of why our coaches are so important, and that the coaches at the end of the day are making the decisions on what's going to be best for an individual athlete. In particular, with my example of Andrew keeping his hands up, that was just one example of something that we had discussed could be one step closer to getting one step faster. But that was just a couple of lines of code that I included that if his hands drop here, change the skeleton to look this way. And so that could go for many other technical corrections. And this isn't a large scale product. This is me doing one thing at a time. So real products, real companies out there could probably make it so that if you want to change one small technical thing, you could plug that in and have that match what a coach was informing.
Amazing talk, Emily. My question is, initially, how did you go about selecting the base model? Like, how did you do preliminary research on which model to select? Because there might be many. And when did you decide that it's good enough to just like go ahead with the process? And during the process, did you realize that, I should go back and reselect a different model to go ahead and do your research with?
Yeah, so at first I thought about training my own model, and that seemed like the most heinous thing to do ever. And so then it became what code looks pretty available that I can edit well myself. And what I really appreciated about with the baseline model that I chose, MetTrabs, was they had a core point at your pelvis, and that differed from other models that were available. I don't want to say anything bad about other models because it's now been a year since I was comparing them, but some models, if there was a question about where someone's body was, it would think that your leg was over your head. And what I appreciated about this baseline model was if there was an occlusion, it would predict you standing up. And I thought that it would be easier to smooth out the data of someone standing up versus someone's leg over their head. So that was what kind of led to my preliminary take on the model that I chose. And it had been tested at that time in 2023 against striated transformers, and it performed the best on in the wild data. So that's how I chose MetTrabs. Since then, I believe other models have arisen, And this is changing every single day. So this, this could be a model that's in a couple days, in a couple months, in a couple years, no longer as useful, but at the time it was the best friend in the wild.
Great, and we have time for one more question, maybe.
Thank you for your presentation. So when I select the second position for the question, the reason is that the sport is I think the keeping the stable position is important for that sport. But sometimes some sports is important to adapting to the new atmosphere, new environment. It means that keeping stable position is not important for the question, important sport. Then how can we select the ideal position for the various sports? So that is my question.
Okay, that is such a great question that's gonna, I think, become sports specific. I'm thinking about an individual athlete at a time, and it's very clear in a cyclical sport what needs to happen and how someone's position needs to be. I think you bring up if a football team was looking, but they have big models and big cameras, but you can think of another example, maybe a tennis team. I think that's going to really come down to the implementation of the exact sport that's looking to implement the tool. I wish I had a better answer. Then it's going to come down to those coaches and those teams, but I can't say what is going to be best for other sports and choosing their motions.
Great, thank you so much. Emily, everyone join me in giving her another round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.